Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Look, we know the Lakers haven't had the busiest offseason in the world, but are people a little too down on the squad? We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. This one's always free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers. Leave questions, leave comments. We look at this thing every single day, and we use those questions and comments as a lot of times as topics for the show. So you might hear your name and your contribution be part of the whole big thing. Do want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 to get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So it's been kind of interesting, Andy. The Lakers, when you see these, different sites, different whatever, have off-season grades and this and that, whatever, the Lakers always rate out as really low because they didn't do much. And by didn't do much, they kind of didn't do anything. But there's, I think, a tendency perhaps to knock the team as it exists more because of the lack of activity rather than how good or bad the team actually is.
Yeah, there's a couple things that have been going on lately that have been getting me thinking about this in particular. First of all, I saw that Austin Reeves was doing a press tour in the Philippines for a betting app called Arena Plus, and he talked about his confidence with basically running back the team. And he said, quote, "As our team, I like where we're at. I think we have what we need to compete for a championship." You look back at the Denver series last year, I forgot the statistics, but we led like 65 minutes to their 59 or something like that. We got beat 4-1, which we can't really wrap our minds around. So I like where we're at. Obviously getting JJ, as I was talking about, as a fierce competitor, going down the line of what he likes about Redick and just the intensity that he brings. And I think just a fresh voice. And I think from, at the risk of putting words in Austin Reeves' mouth, a different voice was
fresh strategy, fresh everything, a lot of fresh
is going to be very welcome. And we've talked before about the idea that I know people can roll their eyes at competitive series, they lost by only a combined 22 points, yada yada, but the fact remains they only lost by a combined 22 points over 4 games. 2 of those losses were, for all intents and purposes, either buzzer beaters or the second to last shot of the game. Jamal Murray making very contested, difficult shots. And yes, there is still an onus on the Lakers not to blow leads in games, like all that different stuff. But it had gotten me thinking about the idea of how much of the way the Lakers are perceived is in particular affected by having lost so often to Denver. They've lost 2 series in a row to Denver, one getting swept, one 4-1. They've had all these series losses against Denver. For a while, Anthony Davis was getting badly outplayed by Nikola Jokic. That ended up becoming not a thing at all during the playoffs, but just that combined with the idea that Denver has been treated for a while as kind of the gold standard for the league, a potential dynasty in the making, before losing in the next round themselves, losing KCP over the offseason, looking thinner as a team. Jamal Murray, those 2 game winners notwithstanding, not a great season last year, not a great playoffs last year, a god-awful Olympics. And I was just wondering how much maybe the perception of the Lakers is particularly affected by these losses to Denver specifically, and just looking like Denver is their daddy. And I'm not the only one thinking about this. From at the Nathan Mark on Twitter today, quote, Has not being able to beat Denver specifically masked the fact that for the past 2 seasons, post-D'Lo trade, the Lakers have been a top 2 or 3 team in the West come playoffs. I assume he means that winning at a clip that would put them in the top 2 or 3.
Or whatever they were, 30. They won,
right.
36 and 18 or something like that after they fixed the lineup and all that stuff.
I totally think this is the case and is maybe what the front office sees too. And look, the front office attempted to make moves this offseason. They couldn't get any done to their liking. But even before Nathan Mark reached out to us, that is something that had been on the agenda for you and I to talk about. That I brought this up to you. I wonder, after Austin mentioned that, I really just started thinking about how much of this is specifically about losing to this team that seemed like the standard everyone else had to meet. And that might not even be the case anymore.
It's part of it. I think there's no question it's part of it. And I think it's, and for all of the, yes, the series was close and this and that, whatever, it was, they've lost 8 of 9,
sure,
I should say, to them in the playoffs. So it's but what I described last year, and this is, I think, important because it sounds like, there are 2 ways to look at the thing where you say oh, you were so close, we did this, that, if you just, you can start to chop these things up. What separates good teams from great teams, I think, or bad teams from good teams and stuff like that, is kind of what I described last year as the last mile problem, where how do you get to the very end of the game, those last 2 or 3 minutes when every possession is of the most importance and little mistakes are amplified, and one bad decision and all these other things, one mistake defensively, one person needs to step up and play that maybe make a play that they shouldn't. And the Lakers weren't great at that against the Nuggets last year. They were better against other, actually pretty decent fourth quarter team, but against the Nuggets, they really struggled to do that. And I think it hurts that it was the same team 2 years in a row, 4-0, 4-1. It shows a gap, a real gap between a team like Denver, who were in the elite last year.
Sure.
And I think could be knocked down a little bit this year, but we're judging by last year's team. And obviously we're even elitier the year before. But that doesn't make the Lakers bad. That means the Lakers are, I think, what you and I have been saying that they are, which is a tier below. They are a team that needs some help or an extraordinary set of good luck to get there. Because you look at this team, 47 wins last year. The team is the same. I realize the Western Conference got better last year, better in the offseason for the most part. But the Clippers are a team that finished ahead of the Lakers and could lose a couple games, relative to their standing last year. The
Clippers on paper are a worse team. That's not.
I would agree with that. Obviously, the Western Conference got better, and if in a conference that's getting better, if you're not improving, you're getting worse. But the team itself didn't get worse; it just got the same. And so, the idea that they are going to fall off a cliff, which is something that we can discuss here in a second, because that is a prediction that came from ESPN, which we'll explain in a second, is something that I don't know if I'm ready to buy. I don't know if the win total is going to be 47. I don't know if it's going to be 49. I don't know if it's going to be 45, 44, whatever. I think, what was our
43 and a half.
FanDuel had it at 43 and a half.
The last line we looked at from our friends at FanDuel, it was 43 and a half. You and I both said we would take the over.
Right. Would I take 46 and a half, 47? I don't know. But I think at 43 and a half, I would take the over there. But why is it that people expect the Lakers to be, at least in the Western Conference, team most likely to fall off a cliff? Why did the New Orleans Pelicans decide that they wanted next year's first round pick from the Lakers as opposed to this year's when the Lakers picked up Dalton Connect? Well, there are a couple reasons for that as well, and we'll tackle all that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, or all the above, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what it is you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn. My dog just keeps wandering through here. My dog wants to level it up her ride. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers and dogs.
So Tuesday on our show, we had Law Murray, the great writer from The Athletic, covers the Clippers, just great NBA writer and somebody that any NBA fan should be tuned into in terms of all the work that he's doing. And we talked a lot about the state of the Lakers, the state of the Clippers, and what makes these teams both intriguing and potentially scary. And it is apropos, Andy, I would say that we look today and on ESPN's sort of off-season rankings that they have, or predictions, I should say, is a better way of putting that. They have a bunch of different categories. Who's going to make the biggest leap? They have early favorites for different awards and all this stuff. There is a team turmoil category. Which team will take a tumble this season? It's very alliterative. And not surprisingly, the two teams that top out this category are the Lakers, gaining 43% of the vote. Woohoo! And the Clippers, who were right behind them. So
no, not right behind. They were not right behind. The Lakers had double the points almost.
Right, they did, but I'm saying they were next in line. So they got, if the Lakers got 43% of the first place votes, the Clippers were pretty close in terms of, they got about half that in terms of the amount. So yes, more teams paying attention to the Lakers. I do, though, think that has something to do as much with the Lakers being the Lakers and more teams paying attention, more people paying attention to them. But the reason, Andy, I think why both of these teams would be in this category and leading the way is the same for both. It's that nobody, obviously the Clippers lost Paul George, but fundamentally it's a referendum on, do you trust Kawhi Leonard to stay healthy? The answer is no, not really. Do you trust James Harden necessarily to stay healthy? Maybe not, but he's also 35 at this point, and there's only so much. And
you can't always trust him to stay engaged. Forget healthy.
Right. There's just so much. There's only so much I think you can realistically get out of James Harden at age 35 anyway. And for the Lakers, it is a belief that the 71 games, was it 69 that LeBron played or 71? I forget. It was a 71 for AD, whatever they played. The 70 plus games on average that both of those guys played is not something the Lakers are going to replicate this year. And if that happens, there is no way that they match what they did last year. So you see these predictions, and it's not based on the idea that the roster itself is bad. It's based on the idea that they're not going to get the same luck with their stars as they got last year. And to me, those are very different things, in terms of why is your team expected to make a big drop from last season. There's a big difference between we think injuries are going to happen that didn't happen last year, and your team just isn't very good.
Well, yes, except I also get a sense that a lot of the people at ESPN also don't think the Lakers are very good, in part because the breakdown of the Lakers winning this poll is, quote, first-time coach in J.J. Redick, a superstar turning 40 in LeBron James, and plenty of questions on the court after a first-round exit in last season's playoffs. So it's not just the idea of how many times can you expect AD and especially LeBron to stay healthy like they did last year. It's they got issues in terms of roster composition that go beyond whatever doubts you have about their ability to stay healthy. So, I mean, I got a very strong impression that nearly 50% or so of the ESPN experts polled, they got questions about pretty much everything with the Lakers. And just the idea that they mentioned the first round exit and, plenty of questions, that sort of stuff. Those are fair things to bring up, but it's like we were talking about before with perception. If the Lakers last year, we've talked about this before, better decisions from Darvin Ham could have led to the Lakers winning 3, 4, maybe 5 more games. I don't think any of the listeners or viewers of this show, or certainly not the ones we hear from, would argue much with that statement.
No, we'll call it 3 games. I mean, because let's say a smarter way of allocating minutes throughout the season isn't even like, you remember that game where he didn't do X, Y, and Z, and it could have bad play call. No, this is just the chaos of your lineup choices impacting the team in a way that costs them wins. So if they win 3 more games, it's a 50-win team.
Right. And that is part of where I was going. And first of all, if they win 50 games, they end up with a different playoff draw. They end up the 6th seed if they win, they end up the 6th seed if they win. So that means they're playing the Timberwolves. I don't know if they beat Minnesota or not, but they had played better last year against Minnesota than they had against Denver. But also, too, there is something, whether it should be the case or not, there is something psychologically different when you examine a 50-win team or a 51-win team versus a 47-win team. Mm-hmm. The difference, particularly in a West as tough as the one the Lakers played in last year, may not be that big, but all of us our brains are wired to see it differently. It is different when you see a 5 in front of the win total than a 4. And I'm pretty willing to bet that the perception of the Lakers, exact same team, had they won 3 more games, which I don't think is unrealistic at all when you take a look at last season and how many avoidable losses they had for pick from the smorgasbord of reasons. If they win 50 games, you are thinking differently about this team. Or if they just don't lose 2 years in a row to a Denver team that everybody has perhaps prematurely crowned as a dynasty in the making.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, obviously we can't ask every ESPN voter here, what put them there. I think what you're talking about is valid. I think, but I think number one in all those things is they don't think AD and LeBron will stay healthy. And when we, in the next segment, I want to break this down a little bit because, people say there's a lot of questions on both sides of the ball and this and that. Are there that many questions on both sides of the ball, or do we actually kind of know the answers to a lot of those things? I will ask you that question next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, got a little something different for you right now. Through September 22nd, as of this recording, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That is worth more than $5. I'll tell you right now. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you got to do is get yourself a Google account. You probably have one already, and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And while you start getting ready to sign up, you can also start thinking about the 24-25 odds for the upcoming NBA season. Sports season is getting ramped up. It is awesome. As of this recording, the Lakers 35-1 to win the title. Anthony Davis 150 to 1 for MVP. Also 25-1 for Defensive Player of the Year. Dalton Knecht 10-1 for Rookie of the Year. Max Christie 150-1 for Most Improved Player. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day. For your second listen, try the Locked On NBA podcast. Of course, there's no offseason in the NBA, and the Locked On NBA show provides daily basketball analysis everyone in the local and national experts in 30 minutes or less, keeping you informed and entertained, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's interesting. I mean, I understand, like, we ask a lot of questions about, how much is Gabe Vincent going to make a difference? How much is Jared Vanderbilt healthy going to make a difference? Can Max Christie step up now that he's going to play, because they're paying him obviously much more this year and he's going to play. But in terms of like big let's say, there are fewer questions about kind of what this is going to look like, I think, for the Lakers than you could argue for some other teams in the West, because it's the same team. And so we saw, I understand, like, it's going to be different with different players and all that coming back and a different coach and whatever. But like, we saw what the starting lineup that theoretically is going to be the starting lineup for the Lakers again this year. I do not anticipate Redick changing it. We saw,
or if he changes it, probably it's Vando in for Rui. I would be surprised.
Which is also something that we've seen.
Right. I was going to say, I would be very surprised if it is not some combo of D'Lo, Reeves, AD, LeBron. Those are the four givens, and either Rui or Vando. I would honestly be quite shocked if it's something other than that look. We don't know exactly how JJ Redick is going to have them play, because we've never seen him run a system for players that were above 9 years old, but we know how he's talked about it. And either way, we know how these guys play off each other. I'd like to think, even if JJ Redick makes some changes, and I assume that he will, he's not looking to completely reinvent the wheel in a way where these guys are playing off each other in ways that's like, dude, but you're completely taking away all of our synergy that we built.
Right. It's not going to be.
They could have kept Darvin Ham for that. Right. They don't have to fire Darvin.
Again, it's not that they don't have. I think when people talk about questions, it's like, do they have weaknesses? Yes.
Yeah.
And we can sit here and we can lay them all out. We have, and we will continue to. But I actually don't have tons and tons of questions about this team and question marks. I mean, I guess you could say, like, the question mark is a center that can, provide a little versatility in terms of maybe letting Anthony Davis start with Anthony Davis, although I think this is a wildly overrated talking point because they're not going to move LeBron to the 3. But be that as it may,
that is not a thing.
But another burly center or something like that, a physical player that is bigger and stronger than, say, Christian Wood or Jackson Hayes. But the question is, how are they going to get that guy? Not what does it look like when they don't have him. We know what it looks like when they don't have him. We know what how is a D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves backcourt going to, well, we know because we've seen it. And so I think people sometimes can confuse weaknesses with unknowns. The Lakers are actually one of the more known teams in the Western Conference. And I might even argue that is a reason that people are knocking them down, because it's hard to see upside. It's hard to see they've done this. So now, like, the Oklahoma City Thunder have all this young talent, and they added Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein. By the way, they have every reason. This is not hype. They have every reason to be very excited there. But like, you can look at it and say, wow, look how good they were last year, and they should be even better this year, because you can project forward. You can project forward with a lot of teams in the West, but you can't do it with the Lakers because they're the same team. They seem like they can only really get worse, other than with internal improvement, which I don't necessarily expect the national media to focus on nearly as much as we do.
Well, there's also too, like, we both made it pretty clear we do not consider the Lakers front-running contenders. We don't think it's not even close. Roster. Right. We don't think it's a bad roster. We've made it clear we think they're a playoff team. We've made it clear we think they can be better than last year. What that means in terms of win total, I don't know.
Right. And we've made it clear that there is tremendous downside risk to this team, and they could absolutely be team turmoil tumble for a good reason. Like, it's not that's not, I acknowledge that too.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think you and I do hopefully a pretty good job of being honest about this team without being pessimistic for the sake of stirring up anger that can often lead to increased traffic, if we're being honest about how the game works.
Traffic-inducing anger, we call it.
Yes. I do think, though, there is an element of people focusing a lot on the window with LeBron.
Sure.
And, like the idea of, is that window still open? How open is it? Will LeBron win another championship? Look what he's doing, pushing 40. It's amazing, all that. And we've said before, candidly, there is a very good chance that the Russell Westbrook deal and everything that came from it accelerated that window, if not slamming shut, getting pretty close.
From one hand on the sill to two hands on the sill.
Right. Like pretty close to being closed. Like it just, they may have ultimately taken themselves out of, at the very least, their best opportunities to win a championship because of everything that came with it. Well documented. Don't need to go there again. But I think because of that situation for the Lakers, we often don't know how to talk about LeBron if he's not doing anything other than winning championships. You know what I mean? Like we talk about him so much either in the GOAT conversation or all the years in a row winning championships, or like the standard for LeBron, and it is a testament to how incredible of a player he's been for so long, has always been championships.
Right.
So if you don't immediately see LeBron in part of that championship conversation, I think there can be a what the hell are we doing here factor that may be legitimate to ask, but can also make things seem worse than they actually are. Like, just being on a good team is not really a way we ever talk about LeBron. He's either carrying a bunch of dead-ass Cavaliers further than they ever have any business going because he's so great, or he's part of a front-running team just, destroying the Eastern Conference. It's very rare we talk about LeBron just being on a good team, not a great team, not a bad team, good team.
What I think we're doing here is trying to balance, is trying to figure out are we picking the right reasons to pick against the Lakers? And, not, disappointment over the LeBron window, while I think accurate, and, sort of like it's disappointing the Lakers put themselves in this situation where they had no maneuverability in this offseason. Like, that sucks and it's disappointing, but it doesn't also sort of materially impact the quality of the team. The roster is the roster. And they don't lose points because you wish they could have made moves that they weren't able to make. It limits their upside again, but it doesn't change the roster. And so I'm trying to just make sure that I'm picking the stuff that actually will impact their play. Like and it's, most of it is obvious. I mean, I think that's part of it too, is like, it's so bright and shiny and obvious that the Lakers are remarkably susceptible to injuries to their stars. I'm not saying that all teams are susceptible to injuries to their stars. Of course they are. The Lakers will suffer more from that than other teams will, particularly Anthony Davis, because there's virtually no way the Lakers are going to be able to defend. Anthony Davis, it should be noted, actually ranked pretty high in the predicted ESPN Defense Player of the Year award, which is, and he got even, I think, an MVP vote in there too. He got a few, which means somebody thinks the Lakers are going to be competitive. But, so things like that are just sort of true. And if, Russell takes a step back from what was a very good season last year, if they have injuries like they did last year in terms of key supporting members, like there are a lot of
Reeves really has no more levels to reach. If Rui is basically the player that he is,
or if Rui regresses a little. I mean, like, again, like, was last year, as it turned out, it seemed like it was a pretty sustained thing from last year's or 2 seasons ago, the playoffs. But what if it isn't? What if it was kind of a high water mark and he shoots 34% from 3-point range this year and stuff like that? Like, there's some potential regression from players, and that will hurt them. There's no, all of this stuff is not that complicated to figure out. It's just, are you picking stuff that is not based on vibes? Are you basing this on
Yeah.
vibes? Are you basing this on the roster? And I can go down the entire Western Conference, and I'm not putting them. I think if they can finish 5th or 6th, that's a really good result, probably pretty close to the top end. It is easier for me to say they're going to finish 12th than it is 4th. Like, all of these things for me are true. I think there are more scenarios in which they finish 12th than when the ones where they finish 4th. Certainly based on the roster is currently constructed. So, none of that means that the team itself sucks and deserves the sort of, I think, they deserve scorn for different reasons, not the reasons that.
And look, they can have scrutiny. I mean, they're
Sure.
certainly not above scrutiny. And
Do it 5 days a week.
Look, I know I've talked ad nauseum about the challenges that come with pacing LeBron for the first 50-ish games of the season and how that can put a ceiling on how high they can rise up in the West, and how high they can rise up in the West is a direct dictator in where they finish in the playoff standings, assuming they're in it, and the seed that they get and how much strength they enter with. All of that stuff, all of that is real. They're just an interesting team in that it's harder to see a higher ceiling. It can be easy to see a lower floor, but there's nothing glaringly wrong with them other than blank can go bad, blank can go bad, blank can go bad. Like, when you look at the roster, it has issues like any other team, but they're not bereft of talent. You're not asking a superstar to basically carry the whole thing. They've got, I think, a fairly deep roster just in terms of guys you can put out on the court.
Especially if the supporting cast is healthier this year,
Sure.
and so on, and you get contributions from Christie. Sure.
I am counting on contributions.
It's
from
not
Christie.
like wildly high end, but they've got too many players at the back end of the roster that I wouldn't want to play, but they have enough players at the front of the roster that I'm fine with.
Look, if guys stayed relatively healthy and you can play your 1 through 9, their 1 through 9 is pretty good.
Yeah.
It may not be championship good.
It's not bad.
No, it's more than just not bad. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
We often don't know what to do with good in analysis. You know what I mean? Like, we don't.
Well, because again, like you said, the margin is championship. Like, if you're not like, we tend to talk about teams that aren't championship caliber as bad when we really should just talk about them as good. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers to the program. Leave us questions, leave us comments. As you saw today, we do try to read them and use them on the show. Thanks again for making Locked On Lakers your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the season never ends and you get all the national expertise and local perspective you can handle. Find that link on the Locked On page in the description, so you don't need to search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Reminder, Michael Pena from The Ringer will be on our show for Friday, and we'll see everyone tomorrow.